Football's Golden Oldies, sponsored by the Toll House in Lancaster. War Jackie, a name synonymous with excellence. Later in his life, Jackie described what it took to become a centre forward. A spice of devil, skillful positional play, accurate shooting with either foot, split-second passing, a good header of the ball. These are the chief assets of the centre forward, and to acquire them he needs constant practice to become a master of the ball. He was born on May 11th, 1924 and died on October 9th, 1988, and his statistics read as follows: England 13 games, 10 goals; Newcastle United 492 games, 238 goals, including wartime matches, plus 54 games for Linfield and 68 goals. His Christian names were John Edward Thompson, Jet, but he was known all over the country as War Jackie. So let's delve into the life and times of Jackie Milburn, a great footballer, and since World War II, 1945 to 2022, 77 years, Newcastle have certainly not had a better player. Jackie was given his first pair of football boots as a Christmas present when he was 8 years old, and from that point, football dominated his life. He idolised Joe Hume of Arsenal and hoped to emulate him, and Jackie was initially a very confident young boy, but that changed at a school sports day. He had already won the sprint relay, long jump and high jump, when his father arrived just in time to see him win the 440 yards race. Exhausted, Jackie collapsed on the ground, a gesture his father mistook for showboating, which resulted in receiving a real good hiding. Milburn recalled later, that thrashing laid the foundations for an inferiority complex I fought all my life to overcome. At 12 years of age, he was picked to play right wing for his secondary school and scored twice in a 6-4 win against Linton School, and then scored for East Northumberland Schools in a 3-2 defeat against Lancashire at Main Road. Jackie left school at 14 and told his father he was too claustrophobic to go down the mines, so he found a job stacking shells on 8 shillings a week. In 1939 he tried to join the Royal Navy, but was rejected for being an inch too short, so he joined the Ashington Air Training Corps instead. At 16, Jackie accepted an apprenticeship as a fitter at a local colliery, meaning he was not conscripted during the war, as fitter was a reserved occupation. He entered local sprint races to earn money, clocking a 9.7 second 100-yard dash. An advert appeared in the North Mail paper by Newcastle United prior to the 43-44 season, inviting trialists, and in the first one, Jackie scored twice. In the second trial, he played for the Stripes against the Blues, United's first team, including Albert Stubbins, and at half-time he was told to buck his ideas up as his team were losing 3-0. Jackie moved to centre forward, scored 6 times as his team won 9-3, and Stan Seymour asked him to sign a contract on the spot, but Jackie wanted his dad to check him first. The dodgy manager succeeded. Jackie was now 19, and the manager, Stan Seymour, turned up unannounced on Milburn's doorstep in Ashington the day after, where he explained that Jackie would be taken on part-time because of his work at the mine on 30 shillings a week, plus 2 and 6 a game for his tea and 2 and 6 for his bus fare. Jackie's father, Alec, was considering the terms when Seymour began rubbing 2 £5 notes together behind his back, and and this caught Alex's attention, who agreed immediately to the terms of the contract. Seymour was elated and invited everyone to the West End Club to celebrate, explaining that I have secured my finest ever signing for £10 and a couple of rounds of Newcastle Brown Ale. Jackie Milburn's official registration as a Newcastle United player was on August 23, 1943, arguably their greatest ever signing. The first training session was the day after he signed, and he immediately impressed his new teammates by outsprinting Albert Stubbins in a 100-yard dash. August 28, 1943, Newcastle played Bradford City at Valley Parade, and Alec Milburn accompanied his son, who played it inside forward, to give him confidence on a momentous day. Jackie said, "My debut was the most memorable moment of my career. Even those 3 Wembley FA Cup victories could not match it. To pull on the black and white jersey for the first time was something special." This is yet another thing that the committees in charge of football have taken away from us, all in the name of profit and greed. The iconic football shirt. If I went to watch Newcastle United play at Bloomfield Road, Deepdale or Old Trafford, I want to see a team in those famous black and white stripes. But Newcastle, like every other team, has 3 different coloured shirts to extricate even more cash from the fans. First goal in a victory. Although his debut ended in a 2-1 defeat, the next game against the same opponent saw Jackie score his first goal for the club in a 3-2 win. At the end of 1943, he had almost completed his apprenticeship and was transferred to Woodhorn Colliery, combining his work with training 2 or 3 nights a week, and he also would work a double shift on Friday so he could play on Saturday. For the 1945-46 season, Milburn was moved to the right wing to accommodate new signing Charlie Wayman, and with Albert Stubbins at centre forward, they beat Middlesbrough 8-2, Bradford City 11-0 and Stoke City 9-1, where Milburn's speed astonished the crowd. Competitive league football began again in season 46-47, and Newcastle in Division 2 beat Millwall 4-1 with goals from new signing Roy Bentley 2 and Albert Stubbins, although Jackie remained a fitter at Esley Colliery. This was Stubbins' final goal for the club, as he was sold to Liverpool on September 12 for £13,000, and his replacement, Len Shackleton, scored 6 on his debut in a 13-0 win. That's still a football league record against Newport County on October 5th at St James's Park. Len and Jackie forged a friendship that lasted all their lives. Jackie thought Len was the most talented player he ever saw. Stan Seymour wields the chequebook to reach the First Division. Joe Harvey in 1945 from Bradford City for £4,500. Len Shackleton in 1946 from Bradford Park Avenue for £13,000. Frank Brennan in 1946 from Airlie, £8,500. Roy Bentley in 46 from Bristol Rovers for £8,500. Jack Fairbrother in 1947 from Preston for £7,000. Frank Houghton in 1948 from Ballymena for £6,000. George and Ted Robledo in 1949 from Barnsley for £26,500. Bobby Mitchell in 1949 from Third Lanark for £16,000. Alf McMichael and George Hanna in 1950 from Linfield, £20,000. The total is £110,000, a small fortune in those days. For 5 seasons before World War II, Newcastle had languished in the second division, and in 1946-47 they finished in 5th place. But Seymour was determined to get promotion, which he accomplished in 47-48. star attractions. Before the 47-48 season began, Seymour resigned as manager and George Martin of Luton Town took over the club's affairs. But we would have to get used to the major decisions being taken in the boardroom by Stan Seymour, the ultimate megalomaniac. The 46-47 season saw the Football League resume, with Newcastle stuck in the second division, playing the first game at Millwall on August 31st. But after checking into the hotel, Jackie, Frank Brennan and Roy Bentley were allocated a room with just one single bed, which they had to share. Needless to say, Jackie never slept a wink, but Newcastle won 4-1. Jackie netted one. Charlie Wakeman left Newcastle because he was upset at not being able to find a peg in the dressing room for his clothes. Unbelievable but true. At the time, Newcastle had 2 dressing rooms and 75 professionals, so Charlie left, which opened the way for Jackie Milburn to move to centre forward. He was immediately replaced by Len Shackleton for 13,000, 1 penny from Bradford City, and in his first game, Shack scored 6 goals in a 13-0 victory over Newport County, even having the audacity to knock the last one in with his backside. Was 1947-48 going to be successful? Newcastle finished in 5th place, but had played in front of an average home attendance of 56,350, the biggest in the world, as a season total of over 1 million supporters squashed into the ground. Promotion became paramount. The question was who would replace Wayman at centre forward. George Martin called Jackie into his office and said, "Mr. Seymour and I have decided to play you at centre forward on Saturday against Bury." Just before the teams took to the pitch, Shack sidled up to him and said, "Don't worry, Jackie, I'll look after you." And he did by feeding him a stream of passes so he could score a hat-trick in a 5-3 win. Jackie recounted, "Len Shackleton was a master craftsman, and thanks to him I got among the goals. I clicked with him, and if he ran one way and I ran the other, and the ball always found me." Jackie and Len were still working at Heselrigg Colliery and travelled to the ground on an old bone shaker, the motorcycle, after work. Roy Bentley complained about the state of the bath in his flat, which belonged to the sister of a club director. So manager George Martin checked it out and could see no problem. But Bentley wasn't satisfied, and 2 months later he found himself playing in the blue of Chelsea. In November 1947, United was staying in Letchworth for a week's special training, and in the first class hotel Jackie met a 19-year-old silver service waitress, Laura Blackwood. It was love at first sight. 3 months later they would marry on February 16, 1948 at Willesden Register Office in London. You can see that in both photographs. By January 1948, Milburn's goals had helped Newcastle to second place in the league, when Luton Town arrived on January 3rd to face 65,000 fans. After a Milburn blitzkrieg with 3 goals, it was said that Jackie would spearhead United to promotion. Despite defeat to Charlton in the FA Cup and the controversial sale of Len Shackleton to Sunderland in February, a Milburn goal overcame Bury 1-0 in March to keep them in 3rd place. Len wasn't happy with the accommodation at Sunderland, but he eventually found a house he liked and moved out of their Newcastle home, leaving it to Jackie and Laura. But Len first of all sold them a huge oak table for £3, their first piece of furniture. United lost just 1 game from January to the end of the season and were promoted in 2nd place with a game to spare, and Jackie being top scorer with 20 goals in 40 games. Milburn would would often begin his shift at midnight on Friday and not finish until 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. Dash home, get washed and join the bus queue with the supporters after being down a dark hole in the ground all alone, often working on his back with dripping water and choking dust falling on his face. He mentioned that he was exhausted and couldn't play to the best of his ability to Mick Bell, boss of the Mechanics Union, who spoke to the colliery manager, and they threatened an all-out strike action if Jackie wasn't given Saturdays off. Fitters and electricians backed him by agreeing to down tools, and the disgruntled boss reluctantly agreed. Jackie also mentioned it to an auctioneer friend who went to a doctor friend for help. After being sworn to secrecy, Jackie met the doctor, who told him to keep poking and prodding the inside of his ears with a clean matchstick to such an extent that they wept. The doctor arranged for Jackie to undergo a medical at Royal Victoria Infirmary, after which, due to the ear weeping, he was diagnosed with external otitis, and from that day on he never set foot down the pit again, though carried on working in the surface fitting shop. Newcastle would eventually finish in 4th place in the league, but Milburn was top scorer with 19 goals, and in the summer they embarked on a tour of the United States, with Jackie living up to his reputation of being the fastest player in English soccer. United played 10 games, winning them all, with Milburn scoring 31 goals. The 49-50 season started poorly with 3 straight defeats and never really recovered from it, finishing the season in 5th place without ever threatening to challenge for the title, and their interest in the FA Cup ended in the 4th round defeat at Chelsea. Jackie was top scorer once more with 18 league and 1 FA Cup goal, but he now had become accustomed to the centre forward's trade, becoming England's new rising star. Newcastle began steaming their way towards the 1951 FA Cup final with a 3rd round win over Bury by 4-1 at St James's Park. And in the 4th round they beat Stoke City 4-2 at the Victoria Ground. The 6th round brought Bristol Rovers to Newcastle, which ended 0-0 to force a replay in the West Country, where they quickly fell behind. But the Geordie fans roared out blatant races, which inspired the team to a battling 3-1 victory. Semi-final opponents at Hillsborough were Wolves, which ended 0-0. Jackie thought they were fortunate. Nevertheless, victory was clinched 2-1 at Huddersfield Ground, and Stan Seymour said, "Don't worry about Wembley. Everybody who played today will play in the final." The team travelled to Wembley apart from George Robledo and Bobby Cowell, who were always travel sick on a bus, so they went on a fast train from Weybridge. The player's wife travelled by 3rd class, several carriages behind the directors in 1st class, and then they were offered tickets in the Wembley paddock, so Joe Harvey's wife Ida quite rightly stirred up a revolt by insisting on decent seats, as United would not be there if it wasn't for their husbands, and threatened a mutiny if changes were not made. The sheepish United directors quickly backed down and granted their wish. Nothing changes, does it? Crisis number 1 loomed in the shape of wisecracking, briar pipe smoking Len Shackleton, who said to the players in the dressing room, "You're playing for buttons, £12 each. You want to refuse to go on the bloody pitch because they're making nearly £40,000 on the gate." Crisis number 2 was of the petticoat variety, as you saw on the previous slide. Crisis number 3, a strict 11 p.m. curfew was imposed after Wednesday night in Cup final week. But 2 players thought they could beat the system, but on returning to the Hell, hotel, both were apprehended and told they were out of the team and would be sent home. No players were named, unfortunately. If you have a problem, sleep on it. It's a worthy old adage. So next morning, Stan Seymour awoke, accepted apologies from the two latecomers, and the good ship Magpie was back on an even keel. The management thought they would be savaged by a hostile press, and even more savage set of supporters if the two players, who were both crowd pleasers, were dropped, especially if the result of the game went against Newcastle United. The squad left Buxton on Friday to travel to Weybridge, where they would stay overnight at the Upland Park Hotel. The 1951 FA Cup final that was contested by Newcastle United and Blackpool at Wembley on 28th of April 1951 was refereed by Bill Ling from Stapleford. Newcastle won 2-0 with both goals scored by Jackie Milburn, who can be seen scoring in the two photographs. Prior to the game, Jackie said that King George VI looked a very sick man, pale and frail, and it was to be his last duty at a cup final. The first goal was scored when George Robledo spotted Jackie on the halfway line and slotted a perfect pass for Milburn to outpace Eric Hayward and slot the ball past George Farm. The second goal has been described as the best ever goal in an FA Cup final, when Ernie Taylor backheeled the ball into Jackie's path and he hit a screamer from 25 yards out to seal victory, later describing it shyly as a free goal. Stan Mortensen, the great Blackpool and England forward, held up the restart for a few seconds in order to congratulate Milburn and told him that's just about the greatest goal I've ever seen. It deserves to win the cup. And Stan Matthews told the press afterwards, it was definitely Milburn's match. His terrific speed made the first and the second was right out of this world. It was the greatest goal I've ever seen, and certainly the finest score at Wembley. A goal every player dreams about. What a sportsman. Jackie felt on top of the world as he collected his medal from the Queen, waving at his wife and mother, who were both wiping away tears from their eyes. Suddenly, from out of the mass of faces around him, a disgruntled, fiery-eyed so-called Blackpool fan leaned over the barrier and grasped Jackie's collar, twisting it viciously as Jackie stared into the contorted face, absolutely satiated with hatred, and struggled frenziedly to free himself before he choked, barely able to splutter at him to let go, or words to that effect, but the maniac's cast iron grip merely tightened. A Newcastle player walloped the delinquent to free him, but the sorry episode almost ruined Jackie's big day, and it took him a long time to get over it, and the authorities never identified the culprit. Jackie, feeling emotional, left the field first, as he was hot and drained after the disturbing event, but was amazed at the huge cheer he received from the sporting Blackpool fans standing above the tunnel leading to the dressing rooms. He put his medal in a safe place and then went into the bathroom, still wearing his shirt, shorts and boots, to plunge headfirst into the cold bath. It was wonderful. As a thank you gesture and in celebration of winning the FA Cup, the directors invited the team and their wives to a dance at the packed Oxford Gallery. At the interval, all the players' wives were invited up on stage to receive a special presentation, and the blushing ladies lined up to be handed out a copiously stuffed handbag. Could the bags be crammed with pound notes as a thank you for bringing home the cup? Suddenly there was a ripple of laughter as the handle snapped on one of the bags, which were made from synthetic leather, and when they got back to their husbands, they checked in the bags, which were found to be stuffed with nothing but old crushed newspapers to help keep their shape. Later, the players discovered that some spendthrift at Newcastle United, a director no doubt, had purchased the bags as a job lot of 30 for a mere £17. It never ceases to amaze me how directors always do the wrong thing. It's about the only thing they can be relied on 100% of the time. Nevertheless, the lads have been victorious, and to all concerned, it was really the pride of winning that counted, and anyway, it kept them out of the pits and the shipyards. To win the FA Cup is a great strain, but to try and return it is an even greater strain, as they would discover the following season. Newcastle began the season in good form, despite Milburn missing several games due to a pulled leg muscle. But by January 12, 1952, he had scored 16 league goals, which along with Robledo's 26 goals meant United were in fourth place and tipped to do the Cup and League double. However, their hopes of retaining the FA Cup almost ended in the third round, when Aston Villa led 2-0 and 3-1 at St James's Park, before 3 goals in the last 9 minutes gave United a 4-2 victory. Jackie was linked with a move to Tottenham before United travelled to White Hart Lane in the 4th round of the Cup and won 3-0 before winning a 5th round tie at Swansea Town 1-0. The 6th round saw Newcastle beat Portsmouth at Fratton Park in a match described by the People newspaper as the cup tie of the decade, and Jackie scored a stunning hat-trick in a 4-2 win. Hillsborough hosted the semi-final match against Blackburn Rovers, which was drawn 0-0, but United won 2-1 in the replay, with Milburn scoring the winner to reach Wembley again. Newcastle would eventually finish in 8th place in the First Division, 12 points behind champions Man United, but the Twin Towers now beckoned. Newcastle United would travel to Wembley to play Arsenal in an attempt to win consecutive trophies. Referee Arthur Ellis was in charge, with the teams led out by Joe Harvey and the great Joe Mercer. In the 24th minute, the Arsenal right back, Wally Barnes, suffered a serious injury, so they had to play with 10 men for the rest of the game. Milburn had a quiet game, but almost scored with a header that was cleared off the line. In the 85th minute, George Robledo scored the only goal of the game, which meant Newcastle United became the first team in the 20th century to retain the FA Cup, a great achievement. Jackie Milburn scored 25 goals during the season and was the second highest scorer at Newcastle behind Chilean George Robledo, who scored 33 league goals plus 6 cup goals, equaling the all-time great Hughie Gallagher's record of 39. Newcastle's cup success was not to be repeated in 1953 or 1954, so by 1955 the fans' hopes were not too high, especially as they had a new manager, Doug Livingstone. But a Vic Keeble goal at Plymouth in the third round matched them against Brentford at home, where they emerged winners by 3-2 after a close struggle. Jackie thought the old zest and power was just not with them anymore, but were faced with 3rd Division York City in the semi-final at Hillsborough, drawing 0-0. But the replay at Roker Park saw them back at Wembley following a 2-0 victory. Jackie was struggling with a stomach muscle injury, and if Doug Livingstone's team had turned out at Wembley, he would not have played against Manchester City. Stan Seymour tore up the manager's selection and picked Milburn, and soon after Livingstone was relegated from his big office to a tiny one before eventually being sacked in 1956. 45 seconds after the kick-off, a record that stood for 42 years, the corner found Jackie all alone on the far post, and he gave Newcastle the lead by heading the ball past Bert Troutman. City fell back to equalise, but goals from Carroll and Mitchell ensured victory 3-1. For winning 3 FA Cup finals, Jackie received £73.16 out of the Wembley gate receipts of £123,000, plus the club gift of a bonbon dish, and Jackie said it was the final bitter insult. We were sickened. At the end of season 54-55, Newcastle finished in 8th place, with Milburn and Mitchell scoring 19 goals each, but Jackie had suffered some injury problems. Newcastle went on a 10-day close season tour of Germany and won the first game 3-2 against a Berlin 11. The next game against Nuremberg was a personal tragedy for Bobby Cowell, who had won 3 FA Cup medals, when during a lull in the game, the German left half, Huckow, jumped with both feet on the back of Cowell's car, who was then carried off the field and wouldn't play another game of football for anyone. After that disgraceful incident, no one was interested in the 2 remaining games. 2 won, 2 lost. Before the start of the season 55-56, club stalwart Joe Harvey left to take the manager's job at Barrow on £1,250 a year. Stan Seymour had taken the role of director-manager, and his first duty was to drop Frank Brennan's wages from the maximum £15 a week down to £8. The end of Jackie's international career came on October 2nd in Copenhagen, where England won 5-1, with goals from Loftus 2, Revy 2 and Bradford. But Jackie had left his shooting boots at home and went out with a whisper and not with a bang 8 years after making his debut in 1948. Bob Stoker remarked, "I believe Jackie finished with 13 caps, but that was nowhere near what he deserved, as Walter Winterbottom was in charge and we were in Newcastle, which everyone else thought was in Scotland." Bobby Cowell was still on full wages, but after 6 months he was told that his playing days were over, and Seymour gave him a testimonial which raised £4,000, which the Cowells used £2,000 to buy the United clubhouse they were living in before Bob and wife Elsie began looking for work. Jackie's season ended miserably, with Newcastle losing 9 of the last 10 games, with Vic Keeble being top scorer with 26 goals, and Jackie contemplating retirement, but then decided just 1 more year. The season 56-57 was never going Jackie Milburn's way, as he was overshadowed by youngster Alex Tate, who scored a hat-trick in a 6-2 win over Sunderland. It was Tate again who took Jackie's place in a post-30 third-round cup replay against Manchester City, beating off 4 defenders in a run, which took him from inside his own half before beating Troutman with a superb shot in a 5-4 victory. The next round at the Den saw Newcastle go down fighting, but the early cup knockout all but finished United's season, and they narrowly avoided relegation in 17th position, with top scorer being Reg Davis, famous for the Duncan incident, with 13 goals. This meagre total was factual proof of the Magpies' lack of goal-scoring power. Vic Keeble had taken over Milburn's mantle as king of Newcastle United's goal scorers. hadn't been doing well. The team hadn't been doing well. Players like Lenny White, Vic Keeble and others had come into the club and were beginning to score goals. Well, Jackie's goal had sort of dried up a little bit, and I think he just got to the stage when he had to get away. Okay, Ireland, you win. I'll stay forever. In June 1957, Milburn left the Magpies to join Belfast club Linfield as player manager at Windsor Park, where he won 9 trophies, including an Irish League title and an Irish Cup, and ended as the league's top goal scorer in both the 57-58 and 58-59 season, to become the first non-Irishman to become the Irish League's top goal scorer. Jackie had been linked to many clubs in his career, so what tipped the scales in Linfield's favour? Jackie said, money, pure and simple, even though the local papers were packed with angry letters asking me to stay on. But I was earning £15 a week, and Linfield offered me 25 quid a week, plus £1,000 for signing my name, so I agreed immediately. In his last season at Newcastle, he had only scored 12 goals, and he found it difficult to come to terms with the crowd's critical reaction. He wasn't used to it. He had never had that before and didn't know how to react. Should he go into his shell and hide somewhere, or pretend he was injured? That disgusting good hiding that his father gave him when he was a child had destroyed any confidence he had, and the inferiority complex affected him every day. In June 1957, Milburn left the Magpies to join Belfast club Linfield as player manager at Windsor Park, where he won 9 trophies, an Irish League title, an Irish Cup, plus Jackie finished as the league's top goal scorer in 57-58 and 58-59, to become the first non-Irishman to achieve this distinction. And this wonderful story would end shamefully. Jackie loved Belfast, but unfortunately there was a lot of religious trouble which he hated. Somebody said that they would throw acid in his wife's face, and many similar threats of violence, so he decided to leave Belfast simply for his wife's health, as Laura had 3 nervous breakdowns because of the threats. Jackie had taken a job as a freelance journalist with the Newcastle Journal at the start of the 59-50 season. They returned to the north east in mid-November. Officially the move was a straight player exchange. Milburn for Linfield inside forward Jimmy Hill. But this was not true. It was a lie, because how would the Newcastle board look if it became known that they'd placed an exorbitant fee on the head of one of their most loyal servants? There was great sorrow when Jackie Milburn left Newcastle, but it would have turned to anger if the truth concerning the deal had been made official at the time. Stan Seymour, who was in a class of his own when it came to lying, had acquired this great player for Newcastle for £10 and wanted £10,000 from Linfield to complete the deal. So Jackie joined Linfield on a 5-year contract on £1,300 a year, but it was as player coach, not a managerial role, and Jackie had seen friends like Joe Harvey managing Workington, Joe Mercer at Aston Villa, and Alf Ramsey setting unfashionable Ipswich Town on fire, and he wanted to join them eventually. There were rumblings of dissatisfaction on Tyneside as supporters asked if Jackie would be awarded a testimonial match for 14 years service to Newcastle. Seymour said the ruling would not allow a benefit match to be granted except where a man was ending his football career as a player. This statement upset almost the entire population, and thousands of letters of protest were written to the local press. but the board simply replied that Jackie was a registered player with another club. The £10,000 fee that Milburn had paid for Jackie was soon recovered as attendances soared to record levels at the games Jackie played at Windsor Park and around the province, and his family were very happy with no signs of homesickness. Many Irish League games were played on a Friday night, leaving the weekend clear for Jackie to fly to Newcastle to watch his ex-colleagues in action. At the end of a very successful season, Jackie was selected by a panel of sports writers and referees as the Irish League's Footballer of the Year, and he ended the season with 55 goals, but he also asked to be released from his contract to set up a business in Newcastle. The request was refused. Towards the end of his first season at Linfield, Jackie admitted that he had been getting threatening letters in a vicious attempt to frighten him and his family, as Linfield were a Protestant club, while Belfast Celtic were Catholics. In spite of this, he scored 34 goals in the season. He began the 60-61 season impressively, playing for the Irish League against the English League in Blackpool, where he was sounded out about returning to England, and on his return to Belfast, he put in a written transfer request on the grounds of his wife's ill health. Many league clubs wanted to sign Jackie, as well as a non-league club, usually in Middlesex, managed by Bill Dodgy, and as Jackie's widowed mother Nance lived in Slough 5 miles away, he signed for Useley, whose chairman Arthur Whitty gave Jackie a job in his car manufacturing plant. Within a month of Jackie's arrival, Bill Dodgy had gone to Sampdoria in Italy, so Jackie became player coach, and as the players were part-time, he also helped out at Reading. Jackie stayed at Useley until January 1963, when he was one of 60 applicants for the Ipswich Town manager's job, as Alf Ramsey was leaving to take on the England job. He was first to be interviewed at noon, January 28, 1963. Then the Milburns went to the pitches before returning to Portman Road, where he was greeted by John Cobble, Old Etonian, and one of the directors of brewing giants, Tolly Colborne, who said, "You've got it, mate. Congratulations." Although he could have had a contract, Jackie decided to be judged on results, and he was apprehensive about following Alf Ramsey, who would not leave until the end of the season. Ramsey, never a good communicator, made things awkward from the start, refusing Jackie access to the club files on players and team talks were off limits. I believe the bad feeling between Alf and Jackie went back to a game in 1950 when Spurs were a dominant team. During the game, Alf was hit so hard he was flat on his back, almost unconscious, and when he finally looked up, the first player he saw was Jackie Milburn, which doesn't mean it was Jackie who hit him, but Alf blamed him and he never forgot. Jackie Milburn was the nicest chap in the game, but his team didn't know how to defend. There was a 10-goal defeat to Fulham on Boxing Day 1963. Inspired by Johnny Ames. In March 1964, Ipswich lost to Stoke City, confirming their relegation, and Jackie held an emergency meeting with the players to confront them about allegations of late-night drinking and drunken brawls. Milburn offered to resign, but John Cobbold took responsibility for the relegation, saying, "The last thing I want to see is Milburn go, and his resignation is not the answer. If he is to blame, then so am I." At the beginning of the 64-65 season, with Ipswich firmly anchored at the foot of the second division, With 1 point from 4 games, Jackie handed in his resignation. On Tuesday, September 15th, 1964, less than a fortnight after leaving Ipswich, he made headlines again on the sports page of a national newspaper. But his appointment by the Sun followed articles he had written before for the Daily Express, News Chronicle, Evening Chronicle, Weekly News and the Newcastle Journal. The England players loved and respected Alf Ramsey. The English press loathed him. So what did Jackie Milburn say in his first article for the Sun? It's 12 days now since I quit Ipswich Town, and maybe some people thought I just crept out of Portman Road. Too much of a coward to face my critics, but people in the North East know me better than that. I never shirked an issue when I played, and I don't intend to start now. I want to get one thing clear right from the start. Ipswich are a good club, and the directors are gentlemen. But I accuse Alf Ramsey who gave me neither help nor encouragement when I took over from him. I worked with him for 10 weeks, and the only advice I got was that I'd have to become thick-skinned to make a go of it. In the first few weeks I was there, Ramsey never invited me to a team tour, and when I asked about players' reports, all I got from him was the name of one Scottish fullback and the address of a part-time scout in Scotland. When he was England manager and visited us, I asked him if on his travels looking at players he could recommend any to Ipswich. Alf replied tersely, no. I thought at the time, well, that's a fine attitude from a man who is supposed to have a soft spot for his own club, and a man who is asking all league clubs for help and assistance. It wasn't a typical piece of Milburn writing, but if Jackie felt any injustice had been done, he could be just as critical as the next man. But the photo on the right shows a smiling Ramsey welcoming Jackie to Ipswich. If Jackie was expecting a helping hand every day, it wasn't going to happen with Alf Ramsey, who was a shy, introverted man who was used to making difficult decisions on his own. In fact, I'm not sure if Alf ever had a mentor after leaving school. This family might be unique in the annals of football, as it seems they all played football apart from Bob Charlton, who married Sissy Milburn. Standing, we get Jimmy, Leeds United, Bradford Park Avenue, Stan, Rochdale, Chesterfield and Leicester. Seated, George, Chesterfield, Leeds United, Jack, Leeds United, Bradford City manager, Jackie, Newcastle and Linfield. Bob Charlton, Sissy Charlton, Jack Charlton, Leeds United, Bobby Charlton, Manchester United. Sissy Milburn was a better player than many men and coached her son Bobby, who became, along with his uncle Jackie Milburn, a great player. Jackie was a familiar figure at St James's Park on game day for 23 years, when he was a journalist standing just inside the players' entrance. Of course, when Jackie was playing, he would meet the great Hughie Gallagher outside the ground, who would always pass on good advice. He would chat with everyone and was never late on the telephone with his story. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, presents Jackie Milburn with a sword in 1987 for outstanding contributions to sport in Newcastle. In 1967, Jackie was given a belated testimonial match by Newcastle. He had worried that 10 years after leaving the club, people would have forgotten him. But he needn't have worried, as 50,000 fans with great memories of an iconic player turned up at St James's Park for the match, raising £8,200 that paid off his mortgage and gave him financial security. His His cousins Jack and Bobby Charlton featured in the games as well as the great Hungarian player Ferenc Puskás. The photo shows Elizabeth or Sissy Charlton, his mother Annie Milburn and wife Laura before the game, plus Sissy Charlton's autograph, which I found in my files. In 1987, Newcastle United opened their new West Stand, which was named the Milburn Stand, and it is the only stand at St James's Park named after a player. A survey in 2012 by the Evening Chronicle to compile a list of the 100 greatest Geordies placed Jackie Milburn first, Bobby Robson second, and Catherine Cookson third. What position did she play? In 1980, Jackie was the first footballer to be made a freeman of the city. In 1981, he was surprised by Eamon Andrews at the studios of Time Tees Television to appear on This Is Your Life, and that's the photograph. In 1987, he was voted the greatest post-war North East footballer. 3 statues of Milburn were commissioned. One is in Ashington, that's the top photograph. One is outside St James's Park, that's the bottom. And the third, fiberglass, was outside the ground between 1996 and 1998. But then it vanished to be found in the garden of the sculptor, Tom Maley. Tom had been asked to cast it in bronze, but when Mike Ashley bought the club, this arrangement was cancelled. A steam locomotive, a far right photograph from Ashington Quarry, was renamed in his honour, Jackie Milburn, after his son Jack had it restored in 2006. Rewind 70 years to when War Jackie was toast of New Tyneside. A photo from May 1952 shows a bare-chested Milburn leading the celebrations with a glass of champagne, and this team was the best of those 3 cup wins. George Robledo scored a single goal to beat Arsenal, and with his brother Ted, they were the first foreigners to play on the same team in an FA Cup final. In January 2023, Newcastle booked a Wembley trip on February 26 to play Manchester United in an effort to end this drought and win the Carabao Cup. This team was built on a brilliant defence. Big Frank Brennan, who ate 6 sausages and 3 eggs for breakfast, Cowell, Harvey and Matt Michael, and an electric attack of Milburn, George Robledo and Bobby Mitchell, who made the goal for George. The story of this club never ends. Every day, every week, there is more intrigue and history being written. 3 knights of the realm have their say. The name Milburn will never be forgotten at Newcastle United. There will be players who will pass through this club and no one will remember them. But with Jackie Milburn, you are talking about an icon. That was Sir Bobby Robson. He did have an inferiority complex. He never thought he was as good as he was. Prior to an England game, he'd be talking himself down and saying the fella he was playing against was a great player. I used to say to him, well, you're a great player, Jackie. You've been selected for your country. And that was Sir Tom Finney. He was a fantastic person. I met maybe 3 people throughout my entire football life who never said